Canine dog growls at birthday cake. What they found froze everyone. It was supposed to be a normal day at Brookfield Elementary. The sun was shining, and third-grade teacher Miss Pratt had just finished taping streamers across the classroom whiteboard. Cupcakes sat neatly on each desk, and a big round birthday cake covered in blue and green frosting waited on the table at the front. Plastic dinosaurs stood proudly on top. It was Caleb Rowan's birthday, his first at this school, and Miss Pratt wanted it to feel special. Caleb had joined the class only a month earlier. He was quiet, polite, and always listened. He didn't speak much, but he had kind eyes and always helped clean up. The other kids liked him, even though he kept to himself. Miss Pratt had seen kids like him before, kids who carried heavy things in their hearts, but didn't know how to say them out loud. At 10 a.m., a man arrived at the front office with the cake. He wore a Yankees cap pulled low and sunglasses he didn't take off, even inside. "Uncle Vic," he told the front desk, dropping off the cake and leaving quickly without much to say. Miss Pratt didn't think much of it. Parents always came and went during birthdays. But the school's K-9 officer, Mara Keene, noticed something odd. Valor, her Belgian Malinois partner, had been lying quietly in the hallway. He was a trained K-9, smart, calm, and never aggressive without reason. But the moment the cake passed by, Valor stood up. His ears perked, and he let out a low, deep growl. Mara glanced at him. "Easy, boy," she said softly, placing a hand on his back, but Valor didn't calm down. He took a step forward, nose twitching, eyes locked on the cake box, now sitting in the classroom. Inside, the kids were singing happy birthday. Caleb stood behind his chair, hands folded, not smiling. He looked nervous, more than just shy. "Miss." Pratt reached for the knife to cut the first slice when she heard Valor bark loud, sharp, and full of warning. She opened the door. Mara was already there, eyes on her dog. "I need you to step back from the cake," Mara said firmly. Miss Pratt blinked. "What? It's just a birthday." "I know," Mara said, voice calm but serious. "But Valor's never done this before. If he's reacting, there's a reason." Miss Pratt stepped aside. Mara moved toward the cake. "Valor, sit," she commanded. Valor didn't sit. He stood tall, tail high, growling again, eyes never leaving the cake. That was enough for Mara. "Clear the room," she ordered. "Now." The kids were confused but listened. A teacher's aide helped move them to the hallway. All the kids except Caleb. He stood frozen at the back of the classroom, his eyes on the cake, face pale. "Caleb," Miss Pratt said softly, "let's go with the others." Caleb looked at her, then at Mara. "My mom told me not to eat it," he whispered. "She said, pretend it was from him, but it's not." Mara knelt beside him. "Who gave it to you?" "Uncle Vic," he said, "but he's not really my uncle." Mara's hand tightened on her radio. "Did he say anything else?" "He said if I told anyone, he'd make my mom disappear again." Miss Pratt gasped. Mara's heart sank. She gently touched Caleb's shoulder. "You did the right thing, Caleb." Outside, the school went into lockdown. Mara called for backup and a bomb squad team. Valor stayed close, eyes still fixed on the cake like it might move. They brought in a portable X-ray scanner. At first, it looked like normal cake layers, but hidden deep inside, wrapped in plastic and sealed in a food-safe container, was a small handgun loaded and ready. Everyone stood in shock. "Who puts a gun in a birthday cake?" one officer whispered. "Someone who wanted it past security. Someone who used a child to do it." Mara looked at Caleb. He wasn't just a scared kid. He had been a target, used as bait. And Valor had stopped it just in time. That's when Mara knew this wasn't over. It was only the beginning.
After the lockdown was lifted, Caleb was taken to the hospital for a checkup. He was fine physically, but Officer Mara Keene knew that wasn't the whole story. She stayed with him in the quiet room while nurses came and went. Valor, her K-9 partner, sat beside Caleb's chair, calm and alert. Caleb didn't say much, but he kept one hand resting on Valor's back like it made him feel safe. Mara watched him closely. She had seen scared kids before, but Caleb was different. He wasn't panicked. He was tired, like someone who had been carrying fear for too long. A child trauma specialist came in to speak with Caleb. At first, he stayed quiet. Then, when Valor laid his head on Caleb's lap, the boy finally spoke. "I knew he would save me," Caleb whispered. "Who?" the doctor asked gently. "The dog," Caleb said. "My mom told me. She said if something ever happened, find a good dog. Good dogs don't lie." Mara blinked. Those words hit her hard. She leaned in. "What else did she tell you, Caleb?" "She told me to smile and act normal if Vic ever showed up," he said, still petting Valor. "She said to pretend the cake was a gift. She told me to stay quiet so she could stay safe." That was all Mara needed to hear. She stepped into the hallway and called her captain. "I think the mother is still alive," she said. She didn't abandon him. She was hiding. It turned out that Caleb's mother, Nina Rowan, had once worked for a government agency as a forensic accountant. She had discovered illegal payments tied to a human trafficking ring. When she agreed to testify, threats began. Then one day, she vanished. Everyone thought she ran. But Caleb's story proved something else. She had gone underground, leaving her son behind to keep him safe. Mara worked with federal agents to track Nina's last known location. Caleb told them she had mentioned a cabin in Vermont once where the trees were taller than rooftops. 2 days later, a quiet cabin was found deep in the Vermont woods. No phone line, no internet, just a woman living under a false name. When they knocked on her door and said Caleb was safe, Nina Rowan burst into tears. They brought Caleb to her that same afternoon. First, he just stood in the doorway. Then, with a sob, he ran into her arms. "I missed you so much," he cried. "I missed you more," Nina whispered, holding him tight. "I wanted to come back. I just didn't know if it was safe." Valor watched from a few feet away, tail wagging slowly, his job complete, for now. Back at the precinct, Mara wasn't finished. She looked through case files tied to Victor DeMarso, the man who delivered the cake. He wasn't just a criminal. He had connections to a much bigger network, one that used children as bait, just like Caleb. "What was the gun for?" one detective asked. "Was he going to hurt someone at the school?" "Maybe," Mara answered. "Or maybe it was bait. Something meant to send a message or draw Nina out. If that was the plan, it almost worked." The next day, Mara met with her captain and a federal marshal. "We need to look closer," she said. "Someone gave up Nina's hiding spot. This wasn't random." "How do you know?" the marshal asked. "Because Valor barked before the candles were lit." Everyone went quiet. They understood what she meant. The dog had sensed danger long before anyone else. He had trusted his instincts, and now Mara was going to trust hers. Later that evening, as she walked out to her cruiser with Valor, she looked at the sunset over the trees. "We got lucky," she whispered. "But luck doesn't stop people like DeMarso. We need to stay ready." Valor looked up at her, ears alert, and gave a soft huff, as if he agreed. The case wasn't over. It was getting deeper, and Mara had a feeling something darker was still waiting to be uncovered. The courthouse was busy the morning of the trial. People rushed through the halls. Lawyers carried papers and security guards stood by every door. Inside one courtroom, Nina Rowan sat nervously on the witness stand. She was about to testify against Victor DeMarso, the man who had nearly used her son to deliver a hidden gun. Her hands shook slightly as she waited. Caleb was not there. Mara had made sure he was safe in another town with 2 U.S. Marshals and 2 trained dogs. Outside the courtroom, Officer Mara Keene sat in a small waiting room with Valor at her side. The Belgian Malinois lay calmly, but his ears were up and his eyes were alert. He seemed to be listening for something. Mara noticed his body go stiff. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. Valor let out a low growl, not loud but firm. Mara knew that growl. It meant danger. She stood quickly and looked down the hallway. 2 men had just turned the corner. One was carrying a clipboard and the other was pushing a covered cart like the kind used to deliver food. They wore white shirts and name tags that looked real. But something felt off. Mara stepped forward. "Where's that going?" she asked. The man with the clipboard gave a fake smile. "Lunch for the judge's chambers." "That's strange," Mara said. "Judge Thorne isn't here today." The other man froze. That was all Valor needed. He lunged. The dog hit the man hard, grabbing his arm and pulling him to the ground. The other man tried to run, but Mara pulled her gun and shouted, "On the floor, now!" Seconds later, courthouse security rushed in. Both men were cuffed and searched. Inside the cart, there was no food, just camera gear, rope, zip ties, and a stolen security badge. They weren't here for lunch, one officer said. They were here for Nina. Mara ran back to the courtroom. Nina was quickly moved through a secure hallway with agents all around her. Vala stayed close, eyes on every shadow. They found me, Nina whispered. Her face was pale. Yes, Mara said, but they won't get another chance. That night, back at the police station, Mara reviewed all the case files again. She had one question in her mind. How did the attackers know where and when Nina would be testifying? It had to be someone with access to court documents and witness protection plans. Someone on the inside. She looked through the digital logs. One name stood out, Isaac Harlan. He was a mid-level intelligence officer, young and polite. Mara had met him once or twice. He was the one who had approved the location of the Vermont safe house where Nina had been hiding. She checked the security logs again. 2 days before the cake incident, Isaac had accessed Nina's file. He also pulled transportation schedules and court dates, but now he wasn't answering his phone or showing up to work. This isn't a mistake, Mara told her captain. He gave them the information. He sold her out. The captain shook his head. He's young. Maybe he didn't know what he was doing. No, Mara said. He knew. He just stopped caring. Later that day, they tracked Isaac's car to an old cabin 2 counties away. It wasn't listed under his name, but his phone had pinged nearby. Mara drove out there herself, parking half a mile away. She moved quietly through the woods with Vala at her side. When they reached the cabin, Mara looked through the window. Isaac was sitting at a table with a cup of coffee in his hand. He didn't even flinch when she kicked the door open. I figured you'd come, he said softly, raising his hands. Mara didn't lower her gun. On your knees, hands behind your head. He obeyed. You don't understand, he said. I understand plenty, Mara snapped. You leaked the location of a mother and her son to a trafficking group. They paid for my sister's surgery, Isaac said. I thought that was all. Then they kept asking for more. Mara's voice was sharp. You had a badge, you made a choice. As she handcuffed him, Vala growled low. Justice was closing in, and Mara knew. This was no longer just a case. This was a war against people who used silence like a weapon. After Isaac Harlan was arrested, Mara felt a deep heaviness in her chest. He had confessed everything, not because he was sorry, but because he knew he had no way out. He said he didn't mean for anyone to get hurt, but that didn't matter anymore. People almost did. Nina and Caleb were moved again. This time, they were placed in a secure location known only to a few federal agents. The system had failed them once. Mara promised herself it wouldn't happen again. Before they left, Nina asked for one last meeting. Mara brought Vala, of course. They met at a quiet park just outside town. The sun was setting, and the breeze smelled like spring flowers. Caleb sat on a bench, hugging Vala tightly. Nina stood close by, watching her son with soft eyes. Mara walked over slowly. You okay? She asked Caleb. He nodded. I still don't like cake. Mara smiled. That's fair. Nina knelt beside Vala and looked him in the eyes. I don't know how to say thank you in a way you'll understand, she whispered. But you saved my son. You saved me. Vala didn't move. He didn't need to. He just rested his head on her hand. Later that night, Mara sat on her couch with a cup of tea and Vala lying beside her. She scratched behind his ears and looked at his calm face. You always know when something's wrong, she whispered, even before the rest of us do. A few days later, Mara was called to check on a report at an old trailer park across town. The call said a child might be living there alone. It sounded simple, maybe a runaway, maybe a case of neglect. But halfway there, Vala stood up in the passenger seat, ears straight, body tense. You feel it again, don't you? Mara said. She turned on her lights and headed faster to the address. The trailer looked worn out, paint peeling, garbage bags outside, a broken swing in the yard. A pink tricycle lay on its side in the weeds. A woman from Child Protective Services was already waiting. Someone called in a tip, she said. Said a child is living here without a guardian. No one's answered the door. Mara nodded. Let's be careful. Vala stepped forward. No barking, no growling, just that alert, focused posture. He stopped at the front door and waited. Mara knocked. This is Officer Keene. We're here to make sure you're safe. Silence. Then a soft voice from inside. Are you the one with the dog? Mara crouched. Yes, his name's Valor. He's a good dog. So am I. Can you come to the door? The door creaked open. Standing there was a girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old. Her hair was messy. She wore an oversized hoodie. Bruises marked her knees, but her eyes were clear, watching carefully, like she had learned long ago not to trust easily. She knelt and hugged Valor without a word. Her name was Elsie. No one had known she was even missing. No school record, no medical checkups. But after checking old flyers, Mara found a match. Elsie had disappeared from a shelter 2 years ago. She had been moved from place to place, promised safety again and again, but always ended up alone. Now she had found someone who listened. Back at the station, Elsie didn't talk to the social worker or therapist, but she whispered to Valor. Later, she whispered to Mara. "My mom's alive," she said. "They told me she was dead, but I heard someone say she's hiding." "Do you know her name?" Mara asked gently. "Grace," Elsie said. "Grace Winters." That was enough. Mara worked through the night. By morning, they found Grace at a small clinic in Virginia. She had no ID, no money, just a broken wrist and tired eyes. When shown a picture of Elsie, she cried. "She's alive?" Grace asked. "She's waiting for you," Mara said. The reunion happened quietly in a shelter's common room. Elsie ran to her mother without hesitation. There were no speeches, just a hug that didn't end. Later, Mara pinned a new photo to the wall in her office. Elsie and Grace, smiling on a porch with a note that said, "He didn't just save us, he reminded us we were never forgotten." Next to it was a drawing Caleb had made of Valor under a tree. As Mara sat with Valor outside the school one afternoon, a girl in the hallway pressed her hand to the glass and whispered, "That's the dog who saves people." And Mara smiled because she knew it was true. Valor didn't bark. He never had to.
Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Love Tales of Tales, for long, heartwarming pets and animals. Love stories that stay with you long after they end.